This is a new era which we all are seeing, which is the era of generative AI. Um, to talk about that today, I'll be focusing on two concepts, generative AI and prompt engineering, that are transforming how businesses operate. Um, the advances that have happened in the language-based AI models have really brought in a new era for total enterprise reinvention. As startup founders, we are constantly looking for innovative solutions to help us grow, to improve our efficiency, and to gain a competitive edge. Generative AI in itself has the potential to be such a solution, offering us an array of tools to automate tasks, streamline processes, and even provide creative insights. So today, through the webinar, I'll talk about how generative AI works, how prompt engineering influences the results, and how we can leverage these as tools for our startups. And we'll go beyond theory to actually see some of the real world examples and practical applications that can be used. And by the end, I want maybe try to give you all a clear understanding of what the power of generative AI and prompt engineering has, and also what possibilities are there for different functions that can be solved with the help of generative AI. Chat GPT was one of the reasons why this sudden shift or this sudden transformation happened, where it launched and suddenly in 2 months there were 100 million monthly active users, making it the fastest growing consumer application in the history. So what really happened? What started off was basically like the large language models, LLMs, they and foundation models. They came around. I'll talk about them also later. But essentially, they really cracked the code on language complexity. So, meaning that machines could now learn context, infer intent, and be independently creative. And they could also, quickly fine tune for a wide range of tasks, which is where really we started seeing new use cases and potentials, and we started seeing disruptions. So with the new inflection point from AI, the companies and startups like us, we really need to radically think how work gets done. The focus should be on evolving operations and training people as much as on the technology. Again, so how did you get there? Back in 2000s, we had machine learning, which was the first which was first decade of machine learning, where essentially the idea was that you had a massive amount of data. You were trying to make sense from the data, learn from the data, and generate some insights, find patterns, make predictions basis that. Then in 2010s came deep learning, where we had computer vision, we had speech recognition, search engines, where we were able to detect and classify objects, which came out, which gave us self-driving cars. There was the voice recognition and speech assistants like Siri, Google Home, Alexa that came around. Then cut to 2020s, we have generative AI, where now the entire language mastery has come in, where these models or these deep learning models have actually evolved, and they're able to comprehend the language in a very familiar and natural way, and thus giving us a lot of use cases for the businesses. From how do we get here to like what really was happening before traditional ML? Before that, the entire focus of operations was on standardizations, um, to reduce cost and to replace the human effort, basically to automate certain tasks. After that, with the invent of traditional ML, we were trying to augment decision making with the help of data, again with human being in the center. Now with generative AI, uh, we are augmenting human creativity. So not only we are enabling decision making, but we're actually giving out the first drafts through AI, which the first drafts of tasks that were originally supposed to be performed by humans, and now humans can become auditors of these first drafts, and they can actually build on top of that. So that's with each iteration there has been like a significant or drastic change in how really machine learning models have helped us uh, from the start. So it is very clear that there is a exponential interest in generative AI. If you look at in November 2022, there was only a 3% interest. This is Google search interest in ChatGPT, but cut to February 2023, there is 100% interest. While if you compare that with Metaverse, which Facebook has been claiming is one of the greatest inventions, has only seen a very mere interest over the past 2 years. So it can really goes out along to say that how generative AI has picked up and how the world is embracing this technology. Again, the total addressable market is also expected to reach 120 billion by 2027, So again, offers a great insight into why, as founders or CEOs, we embrace and adopt this technology and bring it in our business models. You can see here that there's a 66% growth rate, and individually year-on-year growth rate has also been very high. Even in the consumer segment of AI, there's a big growth that exists. So before we dive further into what is generative AI and prompt engineering, I like to show a small video of which has been very popular by OpenAI, that really goes to show how how crazy these technologies are and what limitless potential they offer.
I have here a nice hand-drawn mock-up of a joke website, definitely worthy of being put up on my refrigerator. So I'm just going to take out my phone, literally take a photo of this mock-up, then I'm going to send it to our Discord. And here we go. Technology is now solved. And now we wait. So the thing that's amazing in my mind is that what's going on here is we're talking to a neural network. And this neural network was trained to predict what comes next, right? It played this game of sort of being shown a partial document and then predicted what comes next across an unimaginably large amount of content. And from there, it learns all of these skills that you can apply in all of these very flexible ways. And so we can actually take now this output. So literally we just said to output the HTML from that picture. And here we go. Actual working JavaScript, filled in the jokes. For comparison, this was the original of our mockup. And so there you go, going from hand-drawn, beautiful art, if I do say so myself, to working website.
So, I mean, as you can see in the video, like because of the GPT-4 multimodal model, we could actually input an image, and from that image of a rough drawing of, I mean, what was not even like a proper user interface, we got the HTML code, which basically meant that you eliminated two functions completely. First, the function of the person who was doing the UI, designer, who would look at that image and create a UI design, maybe on Figma or maybe on Adobe XD. And then from that UI design, the front-end developer who would then write the HTML code and the CSS code, JavaScript, based on that UI shared on Figma or Adobe XD. So you're basically eliminating two functions just with the advent of one, with the advent of GPT-4. So it really is crazy how these models are evolving, and there's so much potential in what we can actually achieve. So now diving into generative AI. Generative AI is basically a subset of artificial intelligence that focuses on creating new and previously unseen content from the data it has learned. Basically, it is learning through, because it has access to publicly available data, it has acquired knowledge through that, and it can create anything from that, from inferring that data. Basically, it can create text, images to music, even voice. And the idea is that it's designed to mimic the creativity of a human brain, but in a very, very accelerated pace and scale. So what is the basic difference between generative and discriminating models? To give you some context, what we have been seeing so far was a discriminating model, where we were seeing them being used for facial recognition, for recognizing objects in self-driving cars, where it was basically discriminating whether an object falls within one boundary or the other boundary. But generative AI works differently, where it encompasses the data points available and comes out with the new information basis that. So it's no longer separating boundaries or discriminating between the information. Coming to prompt engineering, prompts are just a way of instructing the AI model to generate a particular output. Again, the well-crafted prompts can help us generate accurate, more relevant, and even valuable outputs from the models. It's prompt engineering is just like a craft. It's an art, basically, where it's partially how you can describe your query in English, but the other partial part is how well you are aware of the subject in which you're writing the prompt, so that the more in-depth your input is, the better the result would be. And again, mastering this art of crafting prompt engineering is what really is we are going to see as a capability that is going to be required in most companies and organizations going forward, because essentially these AIs would be good enough to learn almost all basic functions, but then to actually get the work out of them would be the task that we as humans or as employees would really have to learn moving forward. What are the different kinds of chat GPT prompts that you can normally see? There are command prompts where you can tell AI exactly what you want it to do. For example, translate a text. For example, write an email. It is a point to point of what you want the AI to do. There could be Socratic prompts where it is more like a conversation where you want to learn something from it, or you want to iterate or brainstorm any ideas. This could also be useful, for example, if you are throwing in a new idea or concept you have for your startup. You can just ask ChatGPT, okay, what do you think of this model? Do you think will be successful? Maybe compare it with the other existing models, and you can actually interact and try to see where you're headed and get some interesting insights from ChatGPT. There are conditional prompts where you can set a specific condition, more of like an if-then structure. Um, for example, like if a company is looking to reduce its carbon footprint, what steps could they take? Um, then there are creative prompts. These creative prompts are more for generating new or interesting content or images or audios, poems, anything. Like you could even have a short story. You can create customer stories. You can create interesting poster banners, slogans for your startup, hashtags. You can get as creative as you want. Small, maybe a format that I wanted to give of how you can effectively write these prompts. So the idea is that when you're writing a prompt, you should always specify a role that the AI can take. For example, like you can say that, okay, you are a CEO or a CFO of the startup. Uh, what does the role have to fulfill as a task? You can mention the tasks very specifically, and you can also mention the outcome that you are expecting from the task. And with this, like the AI really has the context, like the role in mind, the clear task, and the expected outcome, and then it can really help generate more accurate and effective results. So hey, please draft or think of a prompt that would give you an email draft, which is aimed at sparking the interest from potential investors. And the email must provide introduction on the startup and will also request for a meeting and a detailed discussion. So this is an example of, like, as I was saying. So here in this, I specified that, like, I am the CEO of Edubild, a platform revolutionizing the education deployment journey. Again, what the platform does, right? And then talking a little bit about what I want, that I want to write an email to the potential investor who's a well-known venture capitalist focused on edtech startups. Again, you want to introduce our startup, highlight the unique selling proposition, mention the impact, and then request for a meeting. So sort of summarizing what I really want from the email. And as a result, you can see
Right.
what I get is the subject line and very crisp email of exactly what I'm, to the investor, what I want to write. So again, talking about how our platform really is making a difference. What is, in a small, what it is doing for the companies, what it is doing for the students, what is our goal, and sharing a little bit about what is the growth and impact we've seen, and then just making the call. We're discussing like how we can really leverage AI and prompt engineering in startups. There are a variety of ways we can do that. We could use it for idea validation. You have your business plan, one pager, you can submit that to ChatGPT. You can ask it to give you a report, an evaluation report on your idea, and you can ask it to cover evaluation on specific aspects of the business. It can do that. You can help it to create pitch decks. It can create a basis on the startup. It can actually create the complete pitch decks. You can even ask it to write a presentation, like a VBA code for the presentation, and you can then feed the code in MS PowerPoint, and it can actually create a whole PowerPoint presentation for you. So a lot of ways we can use generative AI to, also SEO, for digital marketing, to write legal letters. A lot of processes we can automate, especially as a startup, because there's so many things to do. I think for us, having experts for every single uh, like legal aspects or every single aspect, it's difficult. So that's where I feel generative AI can be helpful for us. Again, there are multiple use cases. You can use it as a sales agent, use it for customer support, for digital marketing, for market research, also for routine tasks like filling up forms, writing emails, funding grants, and so on. So just to show an example of an application which is built using the GPT API. So there are a multitude of applications which are being rolled out now, which people are building, connecting with these APIs to actually, what the application essentially is doing is that it is building an interface for you as a person to give it a prompt, and it's passing that prompt to ChatGPT, getting the response, and then showing you in a nice front end on the website. So essentially, you're not directly going to ChatGPT to interact, but like it's more focused for specific use cases. Like this one is Course AI. It's an AI that creates complete course contents just with one prompt, right? So I asked this tool, it's a video, what it created. I asked this tool to create a course on prompt engineering, and this was the result in maybe 1 minute, what it gave me. So you can see that it's a complete course. There are sections: production, psychology, design, practice, wrap up, and quiz. And I mean, this all it created in a minute, right? So, and this is now as an online course, you can actually download it um, and directly upload it any of the MOOC platforms. You can share it directly. And I mean, it has created content for every section. In the end, there is also a quiz. So, I mean, it's a very small use case, but it really goes to show like how many possibilities there are really with the help of GPT or generative AI technologies. And just to give you some insights on how maybe this is functioning is that I mean, we can do the same thing with the help of ChatGPT ourselves, right? Like if you tell ChatGPT to give you course content, and then you can first ask it to create outline for the course. Basis the outline, you can then ask ChatGPT to create content for each of these sections individually. Then maybe you can use another tool to bring it all together in an online course. But essentially, what it is doing exactly the same thing, but then in a more, I mean, it's defined this as a process, and then it's reiterating that process every time you give the new prompt. How we as founders can really leverage this technology. So there are two ways we can, adopt generative AI. Either we can consume or either we can customize. Right. The idea could be that we can start experimenting by consuming the off-the-shelf models like ChatGPT, maybe like some of the applications, Midjourney, Tome AI. But the biggest value will actually come when we fine-tune these models on our own data. I mean, imagine like in a scenario where every employee in the company had an assistant that knew everything about the organization, right? Like imagine training a GPT model on all your data that exists in your organization. So maybe your organization is 20, 30, or 50 years old, and there is so much information, knowledge that no one in the company has complete access to everything. Now imagine if all that information was fed into AI and AI would train on that, then that would give you an assistant. So any new employer, any person in the company can literally just go to that assistant and ask it any questions about the processes, the operations, or the history, context, and you would have the answer in like seconds. So that is where I think we will see real value of Gen AI, not only directly consuming it, but to actually then customizing it using APIs and training it on our own data. Like we as CEOs, we don't need to really understand the technology behind generative AI, like how to code it, but to really understand the key features that, I mean, first there is no code, or there is very limited code. So anyone can easily use it, get the answers that we need. There is infinite memory again. So there is no cap on the vast amounts of data it can process and store. But again, we also need to know that there is the lack of truth function, right? So there is no, it's a probability of generative AI coming up with an output to a query. So it doesn't really have a definitive answer, right? Like this is the right answer or this is not the right answer. So you might sometimes come up with outputs which are not as close to the truth or which are not as close to the reality. So this is where we, again, as humans are needed to run the AI and not leave it to run on its own. I think where we can see the difference now between traditional AI versus generative AI is that in traditional AI or machine learning, we were empowering people to make decisions basis the data that the machine learning was exercising. But here we are now we need to rethink the way we use our employees, where they become like they use AI to create the first drafts, but they then becomes people who audit and review the output and then process it further. So some of the areas where we will see how the tasks and roles that exist today are going to now change. For example, is a social media specialist who was earlier involved in creating social media content, scheduling and uploading posts. Now he should be more focused on how to build relationships with the customer and followers, because the creating content part calendar part, scheduling can all be handled by the AI itself. So here you can actually further go into the topic of how these relationships can be built and maintained, what interesting insights could be added, what posts could be created. So focusing more on the job of like thinking and creative thinking rather than just doing same old things. Same goes with advertisers or maybe with software engineers, where earlier they were coding everything. Now they can literally use the code which is created by GPT and then actually review the code before using it. So saving their time of writing the code every single time. Same thing with help desk, sales rep. So a lot of these roles which are going to transform from earlier to now. Again, there are challenges also that we will see. For example, there is a huge energy usage and environmental harm being done when we are using these generative AIs, because these are big models. They need a lot of compute power, and there is a risk also when you use because, as I said, I mean, they're probabilistic. There is no truth function. There can be biased outputs because it has actually learned from publicly available data, where if there was any bias in the data, it might learn from that bias. There could be copyright infringement again because it has been trained on publicly available data. So you might not always, if you create content, you might be, it might be possible that you have to check for IP before you can just directly publish it anywhere. The shadow AI. So, I mean, if you're asking employees to start using AI tools, maybe it's better to have some policies so that they don't use tools which actually hamper the operations of the progress instead of improving them. So as a whole summary, I think there are three core things that any CEO or CXO should focus on. One is the potential that the generative AI will add. Second, in the people that will be affected by this, or the change that we need to bring in people to adapt to the new environment, and the policies that need to be put in place in our businesses to manage the risk and to also adapt to the latest AI norms. And this is a pivotal moment that where we are currently, and where these generative AI and foundation models are revolutionizing the way we think and we use computers. So for companies, it's really a time where they need to advance and need to start adopting AI in their day-to-day workspaces and in their operations. So what we are at Edubild are doing to actually, highlight the importance of prompt engineering is that we have come out with specific experiences. So for example, domain specific experiences. So coding prompt engineering experience, auto GPT prompt engineering experience, design, social media, to really help students, to use these technologies and solve actual company problem statements or actual projects using prompt engineering. So because, as I said, this is really where the future is going to be. So this is something that we also as a startup have adapted to and launched to really benefit the students. Thank you for your time. I'm open to any questions there.